especially you're not just representing your team, you're representing an entire country or entire region, as you said. And about to enter this entire game, game one is one of those games that you really want to win, especially if you want to control the pace of the series.
All right, man. Before I give you the play-by-play for later, I just want to know, all right, what has been the major change in terms of the meta right now, given the current patch? Or is it something that you kind of, has there been a huge change, or, keep me up to speed with this?
Well, when we look at the meta, I do think that there's no big changes. We're still looking at a lot of assassins inside the jungle, a lot of supportive picks in the XP lane role. We have seen the rise of the Hilda in the XP lane, but right now, I would say that the Edith and the Gatot Kacha are still really much in store for very early priority picks, and I wouldn't really be surprised if they are able to secure those picks, but Suyu was open, so might as well take it. One of the best assassins in the game, did experience a few nerfs here and there, but still one of the best assassins inside the meta.
Yeah, and to think that Guam is going to be picking this hero kind of like gives me an idea of how much they've tried to study, how much they've tried to learn. But this is a hero that's constantly, starting to show up in like the latter portions of the fourth quarter of the year, right? The Hilda, and also, of course, the Eve that has been a staple so far in the second half of the year. We've seen a little bit more of the sustainability in the early portions of the game, and not only that, you also get a bit of poke damage from the early to mid, and that might just be a problem here that Guam needs to answer. I feel like they could go for, okay, I like this. It's a Khalid to also cater to the early game snowball and early game aggression that the Hilda might pose here from Indonesia.
Yeah, and what I like about both the Hilda and the Khalid is both of them are flex picks too. You don't really know if they're going to go in for that, I would say, early XP lane pick. They could potentially switch that up into a roam role. So depending on the third pick coming in from Indonesia here, we could see whether or not this Hilda is going to go to the XP lane or in roam.
I think in terms of the Lunox being picked here, I think Guam is starting to be wary about whether or not Indonesia is going to be building on that tankiness, because again, if you have that Hilda on your side, it's going to be a little too difficult to take it down. So at this point in time, they want someone to at least peel that HP bar to shreds, but the only problem is it takes a lot of time for you to be able to get it to scale. And you have another problem with a Joy also joining the lineup here for the side of Onyx Indonesia. Immediate damage from the early game. And as far as I can remember, it's been a while since we've seen, the Joy in like the previous seasons of the Pro Leagues, right?
Well, the Joy has been rising quite well for the past few weeks or so in the more recent MLBB tournaments out there. So no surprise with the Joy being picked up, though against a Suyu. This is something that still thinking about. In terms of wave clear and clear speed inside the jungle, I would still give it to the Suyu, but in terms of overall damage inside a team fight, then maybe it's quite equal. But I would say the clear speed inside the jungle is still very important here, so we might see a lot of leashes coming in from Fnatic Onyx. But in terms of mastery, I do feel like Albert is very, very comfortable with this Joy.
Yeah, honestly, if you take a look at the Joy, just like what you've mentioned, we've seen it in a couple of other tournaments that happened within the week, right? Before, like the past 2-3 weeks ago, you don't really get to see the Joy very often, but in terms of the damage output that the Joy can really give, it could pose a huge problem, which is why I think that Guam had some precautionary measures in this one by just picking up the Khalid. It gives you at least a chunk of damage in the early portion of the game to hope to just land on the pressure whenever necessary. Now the Hylos and the Akai are going to be the bans for Indonesia, but then the Cho and the Gatot Kacha are going to be here for Guam. So kind of like, most of the roamers are being removed here, but yeah, there's a lot of heroes that Kiboy can use for Indonesia here.
Yeah, and this is one of those comfort picks as well. Like, we know that Kiboy loves to play that Tigreal. It does confirm that this Hilda will be going to the XP lane. Now that the Tigreal is locked in, they're still looking for their gold laner, and there are still a lot of options out there. The 1-1 and the Harith only being the two bans in this entire game for the gold lane. So last two picks here for the side of Guam. I am quite interested to see whether or not this is going to be a gold lane Lunox, but looks like they're going to go for the Moskov instead, which confirms that this will be a mid lane Lunox, a very damage-centric lineup coming in from Guam.
Yeah, you have the Cobra at least finally locked in here for their side, and you can also have a Moskov in addition for them as of this moment. So this is going to be a Lunox going to the mid lane, which I somewhat find interesting. Because again, it could go very well or it could go very bad depending on how Luke is going to be playing this Hilda. Because again, you will expect an early sense of aggression from the XP laner of Indonesia. And not only that, because if you don't get the scaling that you need, there's no way that you're going to be reaching the Beatrix that's going to be probably locked here by CW. And they will do that. So I feel like for the Khalid and the Kufra, they're gonna have to find a way to reach that Beatrix one way or another. Because if they don't, then Indonesia's just gonna go ahead and shoot from where they cannot be reached.
Definitely a lot of damage from afar coming in from Indonesia, especially in the hands of CW, but also in the front lines you have the Joy, you have the Tigreal, could buy a lot of time for Indonesia. And for Guam, they do have a lot of damage as well. Yes, they do have the Suyu, but my main worry here is that they're going to take a while before they're able to deal damage, because you do have that Lunox in the mid lane. You do know that the Lunox does need a bit of gold here before he comes in and gets all of the kills, but then again, they are running the Suyu, so that means they do have some sort of early game damage.
Yeah, so for Guam here, just like as you were saying, all they need to do is probably hold the line, right? They can't really take a lot of damage. They can't afford to get those objectives down, and I feel like they know what they're supposed to do. They have to make sure to activate both Kai and both Secret manning the gold lane and the mid lane respectively. This is game number 1 of what is about to happen between Guam and Indonesia, a powerhouse going up against the newest players on the block, as Indonesia is looking forward to another means of retribution.
Yeah, interesting positioning here coming in from Secret, knowing that Kiboy is already around that right bush, still goes in for the front lines and deals a bit of damage as well. Quite the respectable positioning, but looks like Sans is starting to have a upper hand here with the innate range that this Eve has. And now the Lethal Wanderer already being secured by Indonesia as well. And at the get-go, Indonesia is looking really strong in the early game hunts.
Yeah, I mean, as of the moment, you actually get to see a lot of them starting to go with the initiations immediately.
Oh, Vengeance already used here for Luke, and looks like a lot of HP will be gone there, but as we head on to a pause, the regen will kick in for the side of that Hilda as well. So I wouldn't say that there are a lot of damage done. The Vengeance being burnt though, that is quite the early battle spell to use. So still a very even early game with Indonesia getting a slight advantage.
Yeah, you even see Luke already being in the mid lane, right? That's something that wouldn't really be surprising given that the Hilda is practically on their side. So, I think Guam is starting to miss some sort of pieces here for them to be able to at least give an impact in the early game. One, the Khalid is, trying to farm in that other side of the lane, which I feel like he could utilize the Khalid a little better, given that he has that set of damage outputs that could absolutely land in the early portions of the game. So without that, it's the Hilda actually getting the advantage and trying to at least get that damage down on Lunox. And this is what I was talking about before, that when you have the Lunox in the mid lane and you let the Hilda roam freely, then it's not going to be an easy time for Secret as of this moment.
Yeah, and I think for Secret, I do have to give it to him. He knows the boundaries of what Lunox could do. It's fairly safe to be a bit forward, especially if you have access to healing coming in from your light, and the invulnerability as well become level 4. But right now, I would say if Kiboy was able to land that backdash that he was trying to get in level 1, that could have been an automatic flicker burn coming in from that Lunox, but thankfully, that didn't work in Guam's favor. So we're looking at still Indonesia trying to set the pace here, considering that they do have that Rome Hilda. they might be able to bully the jungle in the side of Guam. But for Guam, they got to play a bit of defense in the early parts of the game. Since they're running the Lunox and the Suyu, you kind of want to make sure that the entire jungle route for this Suyu is quite safe.
Yeah, because again, Suyu is practically very much effective in the early game, especially in terms of objective taking. Because that retribution take together with that possibly first or second skill of his really could pose a problem. Could really pose a problem in terms of taking out of the objectives. We're going to be going back into this game so far, just like what we've witnessed from a while ago. We haven't really seen a lot of deaths practically, no deaths as of the moment. But I feel like the fight is about to start as soon as that first turtle starts to spawn, and it's going to be up to Slopesy to actually get that for his team.
Yeah, and right at the get-go, you could see Luke damaging Zukato Zen here quite well, but this is a Kali that we're talking about. One quicksand guard could definitely just pull back all of the HP lost, and you could say the same for Hilda. So pretty much this is a dead lane. They could hurt each other the entire day and pretty much survive anything. It's lost, they don't go all the way, but Zukato Zen here in the mid lane. Kiboy still level 3, no access to his ult just yet, but San's different story. Real world manipulation might be available for this potential turtle fight.
A slight difference here. San's already at level 4. Meanwhile, Secret just reached level 4 by going on to the other side. But here goes.
Flicker quicksand guard here coming in from Zukato Zen, which means that Turtle might just go to the side of the Team Indonesia as they go invade. The moment they get that turtle as well, the light is already used here. Billions burnt for Secret as he heads on back to the mid lane. Indonesia still getting a good gold lead here in the early game.
Yeah, it's just Indonesia learning or just asserting their dominance by using the fundamentals. And just like that, right, from what we've seen, it is starting to be, Guam getting a little bit of that slowly but surely. Because Indonesia is starting to get them one by one. First in facing them off, going up against their opponents by putting the most durable heroes first whenever they get objectives. And because of that, Guam is starting to group up together. And 3 minutes into the game, that's not the most ideal thing to do in terms of, trying to set up what you want to do.
Yeah, and a huge kill here coming in from Indonesia. And in fact, those were a couple of kills in transition. Guam definitely caught out of place there in the early part. But Luke, looks like in a potential 2v1, but this is a Hilda. And it's just going to walk away as we head on to another pause. And this is one of those things that when we look at Hilda, it kind of feels like it's hopeless to kill him in lane. Like maybe in team fights, yes, but when we're looking at a 2v1 in lane, it's almost always sure that the Hilda could walk away.
It's so difficult to just do that against Hilda. I feel like Khalid, during the first few moments of like the off season, if I should say, has really been a problem whenever teams start to use it. Like it's so difficult to kill, it's so difficult to take down. Like except for the fact that when you have Cho to at least disturb the peace of whenever the Khalid is healing, but when the Cho is gone, Khalid would usually be like invincible. You can't really kill it in the early portions of the game. But as soon as the Hilda started to pop up in the meta as we speak, there has been a lot of teams, a lot of famous pro clubs that have already used this specific hero for them to continue their aggression, especially with XP laners that are really aggressive in nature. You have XP laners that would really stay in lane and make sure that their lanes are very comfortable and for other players could set up, but there are also aggressive gold XP laners that would really want to go to the other side just to wreak havoc on their opponents.
And usually those aggressive XP laners are the XP laners that win the championships, and you wouldn't really want an XP laner that stays in lane that much, mainly because you kind of want to affect all of those objective fights. And that's one of the main reasons why we have the river movement speed buff for a lot of parts, especially once the turtle starts and the turtle ends. You want those XP laners to be part of the team fights. And as a Hilda, apart from your innate movement speed and regen whenever you enter bushes, it's just really huge that you could survive lane even in a 2v1 setup for as long as you don't get 3v1 or dove like 4v1, which is almost insane considering that you kind of want to put those resources where it matters most. So mostly gold lane. You kind of want to just gank gold lane again and again because that's where your money is worth it.
Yeah, I mean, to think about it, Guam would make the right moves, but just execute it a little bit on the lackluster side. We've seen the Kufra starting to front. You also see the Khalid trying to at least assist the rest of the members who are trying to escape upon that real world manipulation during like the first at least 2 minutes of the gameplay. The only problem was that they didn't have enough communication just yet, and the rotation wasn't there for them to be able to execute like a full-on counter attack, because you have the Kufra, you have the Khalid in the early portions of the game that would be menacing to the opposing side in the early portions of the game. The only problem is, even though they have the Kufra, the Joy hasn't really felt the pressure as of the moment. And to think about that, we haven't even talked about Albert yet, right? We've talked
Yeah.
about a lot of possible rotations that Indonesia has done, but Albert is roaming freely in the lane.
And this is what you want if you're a Joy. You don't have a lot of damage in the early parts of the game. You usually start spiking up that damage by mid game the moment you get your first item. Sometimes it's a Genius Wand, sometimes it's the Starlium Scythe, but regardless of what you choose, it's always going to be that first item that gives you a lot of damage to begin with. And of course, playing around your skill level and making sure that your Rhythm of Joy is actually stacked up to a maximum. That allows the Joy to deal so much damage in team fights and skirmishes. But if you're not able to get that perfect beat or the perfect rhythm, it's one of those things that actually hurts the damage of the Joy as well. So it's really up to Albert how he's going to play this Joy quite well, because at the end of the day, if you don't get that perfect rhythm, it's gonna be really bad for their overall magic damage supply.
Yeah, yeah. Now that we're talking about Albert, I feel like he's been waiting for his opportunity as well. Like I
That's
think
true.
it's been a while. It's been a long time
Mhm.
since we've seen Albert actually play, and I feel like this is one of those platforms where he can utilize his best. Because when you think about it, it really is crazy to me that Albert is indeed their best jungler as of the moment. That's the reason why he's representing Indonesia. And he's been seeking this opportunity to play for the longest time. And I'm just happy that he gets it now, right?
Yeah, and I guess in their professional leagues as well in Indonesia, Albert has taken quite the time off, even if he is an active player,
Yeah.
mainly because of other players present inside the roster. But that doesn't mean that he's not sharp. A lot of the six mans that we actually see in a lot of our professional teams are quite ready to play. It's rare to see a six man that's just there for content
Yeah.
or just there for for the vibes. Usually these players, even if they're just there for the vibes, they do know how to integrate themselves very quickly inside the squad. So big respect to Albert, definitely. Entering this match against Guam, maybe he could finally show the world that even if he is a quote-unquote technically a substitute, he could still play in the roster if he wanted to, because I do feel like that a lot of the people in Indonesia as well trusts this man. Albert has been carrying the flag of Indonesia for the longest time.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, for Albert, his mantra is probably like, guys, this is something that you probably missed on. You're probably missing on for the longest time, because you're seeing other players play, but now it's probably my time to shine. And I'm sure that he's gonna utilize every single bit of chance that he get to possibly get Indonesia for another championship this time around. But on the other hand, I also want to talk about like Luke in this specific situation, because Luke is the only player from the Indonesian team who's not part of their professional team. So in terms of like the preparations, what do you think are some of the things that Luke had to take note? Because if we remember correctly, Indonesia slash Fnatic Onyx Indonesia has been a household name in their
Yeah.
country. And for Luke to have his debut for the first time, is it something that's more of like a pressure? What does he need to do? What do you think is his idea here heading into this game and heading into this competition?
Well, I feel like when we look at Luke, even if it is his first time here in IESF, I do feel like that he just feels like he belongs. He's already that player that we've
Yeah.
watched several times. A lot of tournament experience as well. He got that spot inside the roster because he earned it. And I do feel like, as Indonesia, one of the biggest, if not the biggest MLBB country in the world, could place their trust in Luke, like, I feel like it starts to become a question of how far can Luke go rather than how ready Luke is. Because definitely Luke came here very ready, and the question just remains: how long can Indonesia go? Are they gonna go all the way to the finals, or are they gonna crumble in defeat? Like, that's one of the first few questions that we have to ask. And right now against Guam, they could potentially just show the world that they are ready to compete here in IESF, because it's going to be a major upset if ever Guam does get this series, because Guam, as you said, still one of the rising regions rather inside MLBB.
Yeah, because again, this is their first international tournament. Aside from the IESF, we haven't seen Guam a lot of times. I feel like joining them is also Bahrain, and then there's a lot of other countries as well. I feel like there's four of them to be specific. So for them to also be part of this already, to be included in the games, is something that you really can take note of. Because again, if you're Guam, we've seen Guam defeat, I believe, New Zealand 3-0 in that qualifiers, which really is a huge thing, because in terms of everything that's happening around Australia and New Zealand, that MLBB is starting to grow in there as well. But to think that Guam would beat something, or beat a country that has growing players already, that's starting to introduce the esports ecosystem already in them, they could possibly have that enough passion to learn more about the game in itself. But in terms of learning, and in terms of like the application, I feel like you'd want to have another opponent rather than Indonesia, because Indonesia would literally just try to put a stamp into everything that you've learned so far, and possibly even change that in this best of three series.
Yeah, and we really don't know how this best of three could go.
Right.
And for Indonesia, you're right. They're happy that they're up against Guam, but you couldn't say the same for Guam. Like, you're up against one of the more historic teams already. You wish you could have started with somebody else, but hey, if you're gonna go for champions, or you're gonna go for at least top 4 or top 2 within the groups, you're bound to fight the bigger teams. You're bound to fight the more historically relevant or historically competitive teams, such as Indonesia. So for Guam, I feel like they've already mentally prepared themselves going up against Indonesia, because you cannot enter this match, you cannot enter this tournament knowing that or maybe expecting that you could dodge teams like this, because with the format that we do have, maybe you could dodge a few, but you cannot dodge all of them.
Yeah.
Because in this format right now, again, I think it's only top 2 teams of the 4 groups, so that's already 16 teams cut in half. So 8 teams will advance after this entire phase of the tournament. So whoever you're grouped with, surely you have already prepared your game plans quite early. But you're right, Hans. Like, I do agree. If I were Guam, I'd want to start with a different team first. I kind of want to warm or get my feet wet for just a bit before I go up against Indonesia.
Yeah. I mean, at this point in time, maybe the idea that they have is to possibly just, at least we know how one of the strong teams play here in IESF. So maybe we can adapt to it at some point in time. We know how we can find a way to be able to get the victory against them. But this is an opportunity for them to also do it as well, because they're going to be grouped up together with Egypt and the hosts, Saudi Arabia. And Egypt has started in that game so far, in Saudi Arabia. I guess we can't say anything less about that team. But going back into this game, this is what we're talking about so far.
No, and right after the pause, you could see Luke going at it very aggressively. Couldn't even save himself, but here comes Kiboy with a great
Oh
implosion.
man.
Real world manipulation lands on two, and that's going to be another kill going to the hands of Indonesia. 4-0 is a kill score, and they might just even get this turret as well. Albert burns the electrifying beats, and overall, just Indonesia taking so much away from Guam.
Yeah, there's just a lot of things that Guam needs to worry about right now. Like it started with one, right? All you needed to do was just take care of at least one scenario, which is to minimize total damage that you will possibly take. But the only problem that is happening right now, as the turtle has been taken once again by Indonesia, is to actually find a lot more of those chances, which Indonesia is actually not giving them. Because even if you do, there's always going to be Indonesia that's part of that, and that is starting to be a problem as of the moment for Guam, who's starting to group up together
Well,
5 minutes in.
yeah, and Albert goes in. Kai 2v1 gets the Cooper ult out as well, but looks like JBS will be sacrificing himself for that entire save. But at least the gold laner is still alive.
Oh man, there it goes again. That is another situation as of the moment, and just like that, it feels like Guam is starting to go a little bit. The how do I say this? The level outputs aren't really practically different for
Oh,
the explainers. Maybe this is something.
nice setup coming in from JBS, but still the damage is lacking.
Oh
CW
man.
almost lands the Redder's apathy, but sadly, Secret was able to do a good sidestep out there. Zakata Zen will be able to take care of that turret. Sadly, the Siege minion does take one hit, and that's Lopsy just going out as well. Quicksand Guard used. JBS might just fall down, but Albert going in for the Rhythm of Joy will be able to go out. No kills just yet, but Indonesia still securing a turret or maybe two in the bottom lane and mid lane.
Again, this is a problem that has skyrocketed now for Guam, Indonesia, carrying at least a 7K gold lead here for their team, and this is exactly what we were expecting from this Indonesia
Yeah,
respective
and
moment. Guam is starting to have a lot of problems in terms of trying to get more of those objectives, and they're starting to struggle in terms of what they want to do.
yeah, Turtle secured as well for Indonesia. A lot of objectives, a lot of kills, turrets as well. Early game dominance is real here for Indonesia. In fact, gold lead has already ballooned up to 8K, and this might just be really hard for Guam to find a winning team fight until they cut the deficit to around 5 or 4K. I think pickoffs is the way if you're Guam right now. You kind of want to get CW or Albert out of the way, but Luke has been such a menace in front of the entirety of Guam right now as we head on to a potential mid lane push here coming in from CW. Luke going in with the conceal as well, and here comes JBS, but looks like the real wind manipulation is used. Bursts down to the bombardment coming in from CW, a bit too much to take if you're Guam. 3 people down for the side of Guam as Indonesia is able to clear out so much.
Oh man, I feel like if you are Guam, your lineup is starting to bite you. Oh my
Oh!
goodness, I cannot believe what I saw, dude. Did you just see that? I'll leave it to you again. And in 8 minutes, an inhibitor is finally down, and in just 2 basic attacks, CW brings Secret down.
Oh man, no offense, but I feel like after this performance, if Guam's coaching staff, they kind of need to reset after this. Like, this is almost done and dusted if you're Indonesia. Like, almost no gold for the side of Guam, and it's 2024 and they're quarantined inside their base as Indonesia is just pummeling down again and again, and JBS trying to look for a miracle here. Real world manipulation, but Slopsy, good positioning, but Luke is just right there, a menace right in front of him. 4 people still alive here for Guam though. Kiboy tanks a little bit of damage, and another inhibitor turned down for Indonesia as they head on for a textbook finish. Might potentially get the Lord as well.
This is 9 minutes in. All inhibitors are finally down, and unfortunately for Guam, the strategy of just trying to wait until the later portions of the game is not working for them apparently, because Albert and the rest of the members of Indonesia are just speeding things up as fast as they can. 10-0 in terms of kills. 9 minutes and 33 seconds in. Indonesia really in the lead as we speak, and you can't really say anything about how well they have executed their game plan, because they've executed it to perfection. Although Guam, they're trying to find a way to at least get that late game scaling to happen, but Indonesia's really not taking a no for an answer, and they're just making sure to just assert their dominance in every single chance that they can get.
Yeah, they're keeping pace definitely with the Beatrix as well. Unfortunate solo kill there for Secret. I think she was on darkness mode out there, so couldn't really pop the light quite fast as the damage coming in from the Bennett. So overall, CW definitely having a great game so far, and with the early game snowball that Indonesia has, this is not even close. Like, if I'm being honest, it's a 15-14k gold lead. It's gonna take a couple of miracles for Guam to have a potential comeback from here. And again, that's MLBB is no short of miracles anyway. Like, if they're able to find a good pick-off to CW, or maybe find a good pick-off to Albert, maybe potentially even steal a Lord, you never know. Like, we've seen comebacks happen from 12k, but I think in the longest time that I've been watching competitive MLBB, I haven't seen a team come back from 15k gold leads. So hopefully there's a first time for everything, and I could be that one insane dude that shouts that the 15k gold lead gets turned around, you know? Like, you'll never know.
Yeah, you'll never know as well. I mean, at this point in time, maybe if the Lunox all of a sudden gets like a triple kill or something like that, I know it's by a long shot, but you know, there are some cases where the Kufris, Tyrant's Rage, and Revenge combo would hit eventually, but as of the moment, that's where they're currently struggling at, as far as I can remember. That has to be their step one. It's to try and find that very first kill of theirs. They maybe if you know this game is probably done and dusted, I feel like for Team Guam, what they need to do is to find that very first kill to get their hopes up, to get the momentum boosted for their team. Just because you know they are in a little bit of a rough patch right now. They're struggling to find kills. They're struggling to keep the objective safe. But if there is anything that they can do, if it's something within their control, it's to possibly get a kill, but maybe off of anyone as of this moment, just so when the second game of the series finally gets into fruition, they have something to look forward to, that if we get a kill off of this powerhouse team, maybe we can do it again and more come the second game of the series.
Sometimes it just takes one spark to ignite a big light, you know, and maybe that one spark is one kill that they could get here in the game, or maybe it comes even faster. Maybe they get one kill, it leads to 2 more, 3 more. Like, again, yes, this is a 14k gold lead. Yes, we have not seen a team turn around a 14k gold lead, but that doesn't mean that there's not a first time for everything, right? For Indonesian fans out there, maybe they're at home right now watching us talk about a 14k comeback, and they're going to be like, look at these casters capping. And when we look at Guam, they're still hoping, you know, maybe even the Guam fans are like, look at these 2 casters still capping.
Like, you know what, give us hope, right? If you're from Guam, you're probably, you know, telling us nah, or some of you, a few of you are like, yeah, probably that could possibly happen, but then all of a sudden you'll never know.
You know, Doctor Strange just doing this one timeline where they could potentially get that W, but you know, every W counts here. Like, I want to reel it back in, Hans. Like, Every W in this format is really worth it for every team here because you are grouped. There are 16 teams grouped with 4 for each group.
Yep.
So you kind of want to get at least one. I think one thing about these types of formats is that you do not want to be the guy that doesn't win even one game. You know, you want to
Yeah.
at least score one game for each because at least it keeps your hopes alive for the next few matches, regardless of what happens in those next few matches.
Yeah, because again, especially in terms of what you guys want to have in the qualifiers, because again, right, if you at least make it into at least the top 4, maybe the top 3 even, you have a chance to represent your country again come next year, right? That is the reason why the Philippines and Indonesia champions of 2022, no longer needed to make it or pass the qualifiers for them to continue. They are automatically invited on the other side, right, for next year. So I feel like if you are Guam, maybe it is indeed by a long shot once again, but if there is something that you can find here, it's to have a chance to play against these top teams, to play against top competition, and you can't, or you don't, you aren't usually given that kind of opportunity, right? For you to be able to go up against players like Sans, players like Kiboy, and a lot of other players out there. So if you are Guam, these are probably the teams or the players that you look up to, and you're probably in a notion like, oh my goodness, I'm actually playing with him right now, right? Maybe game 1 is that kind of game
Jitters.
for him, but yeah, or like it's just them trying to let it sink in that they're playing against some of the best players in the world. And then game 2, I
Yeah.
feel like that is where the reset needs to happen.
Yeah, it does need to happen, and with best of threes like this, it usually that's one of the things that I don't like about best of threes. Like adjustments really have to come quick, but then again, that's way better than best of one where you can't even adjust. Like they could just
Yeah.
cheese you out, and then they're gonna get that point, and can't really come back from that. But at least for best of threes, your coaching staff, your team captain, or whoever is like the glue of the team could potentially just find that one good play or that one good strategy that could potentially get that one game. Again, every game is very, very important in this type of format. Again, you don't want to be that guy that doesn't even get
Yeah.
one win. So against Indonesia, if they're able to score at least just one, that's already a win, you know? Let's be honest, after this game number 1, I'm not quite sure if this could go all the way to best of 3, but you know, I had my hopes up because I honestly think Guam is one of those rising regions that could be just quite quiet, but they do have like talented players to begin with. Like, let's just see, like the moment that we entered the game once again, because right now we are being plagued by a lot of the troubleshooting errors, but this is quite needed as well. Like if the fans are just waiting for the game to happen, we are too. It's not our fault, you know. We're just trying to ensure as well that these players have the best experience that they can, because these games are probably one of their dreams as well. We do not want to compromise that.
I agree. And to mention or to add to what you have mentioned a while ago regarding, you know, everyone being important, it's the double elimination coming forth here for both of the teams. So at least there's 4 teams in a specific group, and then 2 teams will be facing against each other. Currently, that's Indonesia and Guam. Together with them in Group A is none other than Egypt and the host Saudi Arabia. So they're going to be going at it as well. And then whoever wins whoever wins in a game with Egypt and Saudi Arabia is going to be facing the winner of Guam in Indonesia, and whoever loses in this series that you're currently watching right now is also going to be facing the loser of Egypt and Saudi Arabia. So as long as you don't have 2 series losses, you're probably safe and you to make it into the next round. But if you lose 2 best series, then that is where the problem would. That is where the journey goes.
That's true, and I guess as we we enter the game number one again, we might just see Indonesia finally closing this one out, or Guam taking the first miracle of many miracles that they need to come back from a 14K gold lead.
Yeah, this is starting to be a squad that really had a lot of learnings to take, had a lot of realities to be checked here for Guam. They could probably be one of the strongest in their region, but this is one of the teams that's currently strongest in the world. Hold on.
JBS with the play, but a real manipulation comes in, and an immediate 4-man sweep make that a clean out. Indonesia secures game one.
Bro, how anticlimactic was that? That was like the fastest clash I've ever seen in my life.
Probably,
If I'm gonna be specific, because again, if I'm gonna be honest with you, I think I had like a smirk in me just because of how